Sometimes playing No More Room in Hell 2 feels like being in actual hell. One minute you're approaching a console to flip some switches, and the next you're completely stuck. No keyboard inputs work, you can't equip any of your items, and your teammates have to try and deal damage to you to put you out of your misery. Issues like this are part of a large pile of problems that could be excused by its early access label on Steam, but that grace only goes so far. While No More Room in Hell 2 is technically playable, and sometimes even fun, it's not close to actually being early access ready. And even if it weren't riddled with bugs and light on content, it still doesn't have a distinct identity to differentiate it from being yet another co-op survival horror shooter.
News of the outbreak unfolded slowly at first. I suppose they didn't want mass hysteria.
No More Room in Hell 2 follows a similar structure to its predecessor's objective-based game mode. 8 players are dropped onto its one map called Power Plant and must complete tasks while trying not to get killed by zombie hordes. As is common in survival horror games, you'll have to scavenge for weapons, health items, ammo, and other gear to get a leg up, all of which are in generally short supply. This is all pretty standard for a co-op zombie shooter, but No More Room in Hell 2 uses some smart tricks to help boost both your kit and your team.
CRC actual to responder open frequency. There is an emergency situation at the power plant.
You'll spawn randomly at one of 8 points around the edges of the currently available map and work your way towards the middle, completing objectives along the way that'll provide you with all-important gear, but also upping the difficulty with increasingly bigger hordes. The map isn't huge, but it's large enough that you might not run into another player until the final area at the center. Your teammates don't even show up on your HUD unless you're in a party, and you'll only hear them through voice chat if they're physically close enough. That does mean a lot of each round involves going out of your way to team up, but it's an excellent added objective that can make things feel more tense. If you fail, you'll be stuck with some poor loot and nobody to help you if you go down. Fostering cooperation is the key area where No More Room in Hell 2 excels. As you all descend on the final area, you're cleverly forced to work together, and you form some temporary camaraderie as a result. The map also offers plenty of opportunities for grouping up through optional objective locations. Completing them will provide you with loot, guns, bullets, health, and sometimes special items that give you passive bonuses. You could potentially make it to the end without stocking up at one of these points, but this is a survival horror game where supplies are scarce, so you'll want to get through at least one of these areas. They're easy to find too. You can either navigate towards one with the help of your map and compass, or just stumble upon them. Gradually, the lure of precious loot will help you find your teammates at these locations, where you'll have to work together to complete a series of tasks for your reward. Usually that involves things like finding fuses and placing them inside fuse boxes to power up rooms, turning on generators, or connecting wires within wire boxes. Most require basic puzzle solving and timing to complete, but that's infinitely more difficult when you're being hounded by zombies. It's important to watch your friends' backs in these moments. If they can focus on the task at hand and you somehow defeat all the zombies, you can move on to the next one. By the time you reach the final objective, everybody still alive will have grouped up naturally. Of course, this is when the difficulty is amped up, all but requiring you to work together and coordinate. It's a tense finale where you're running around, flipping switches, and entering codes to boot the plant back up, all while trying to avoid the biggest zombie horde yet. You can all split up if you want to, but quite frankly, it's impossible not to help your teammates at least a little bit. When things click like that, it's easy to see the promise here. But you don't have to play much to see how far No More Room in Hell 2 still has to go to reach it. Your first round will be stressful and confusing. Outside of telling you to save your ammo and a couple other tips, you don't get any in-depth tutorials or explanations.
Thousands of lives will be lost if you can't get this under control.
Thankfully, it doesn't take very long to figure out how to complete the various objectives and where to go to successfully finish a run, and with only one map, that means things get repetitive fast. There are at least some ways to change things up. You don't need to approach every zombie encounter by making a decision to shoot or not, for one, and you can use the tools in your arsenal a bit strategically. You're equipped with a flashlight, for example, but having it on will alert zombies. There are even items that let you control crowds, such as a radio or deployable lamp. However, they're rare and tough to throw down in late-game scenarios when you're completely surrounded by zombies, making them interesting ideas that aren't very useful in practice. You can also take multiple routes to different locations. There isn't a lot of variety, but it's enough that you can at least run in any given direction and most likely find a path forward. The level design is on its way to being excellent, with strategically placed dirt piles or trucks that let you climb over fences and lead to alternate routes. That said, there are also a few areas that are too large or feel outright unnecessary to begin with that can lead you to getting lost. Finally, there are multiple character types you can choose from before starting a run, each with forgettable names and descriptions like Nurse or Baseball Rookie. They all provide distinct but small buffs to things like two-handed melee damage or stamina. You don't get a choice of your character on your first run, but after you die, you'll select between 3 randomly generated types each time. And as long as you don't die, you can continue building these characters up through experience and supplies. If you do die, however, you lose everything and turn into a zombie for your teammates to kill. That's another neat idea, but the connection between you and your character would be more impactful if there were more than the small handful of character models that frequently repeat right now. It's these cut corners that can currently pull you out of what could be a standout full release one day. For example, for all the things to like about the map, there are also paths on it that quite literally lead to nowhere. While there are plenty of objectives scattered around, they're obnoxiously inconsistent in terms of difficulty. Some feel downright insurmountable in groups, while crossing a bridge after opening its gate, something that should feel like a huge moment, can be completed by simply running forward and occasionally strafing. Then there are the bugs. So many bugs. Every early access game, and even most fully released ones nowadays, have them, but many here are inexcusable. At launch, shotguns didn't always do damage, and it was easy to clip through walls. Many zombies just didn't die, despite constantly being peppered by bullets. Sometimes your teammate would just be a floating head. It's a mess. To its credit, developer Torn Banner Studios has been working diligently on hotfixes since launch,
I'm down!
and has released some very impactful updates. Shotguns are now more reliable, map markers consistently show up, and inputs are more reactive. There's still a long way to go before it reaches even an acceptable state, but prioritizing hotfixes instead of working on the planned content roadmap is the right call in the short term and has already resulted in some huge improvements. Unfortunately, those content updates are desperately needed too. It's been 8 years since No More Room in Hell 2 was first teased, and over a decade since the original No More Room in Hell fully released, and there's just not much here yet. While the sequel follows a similar structure to its predecessor, it doesn't offer the same ethical dilemmas and tension building. The goal was to build a world that felt like an actual apocalypse where your choices mattered beyond just survival.
CRC actual update. The church attic has been accessed.
In contrast, No More Room in Hell 2 feels like yet another standard zombie shooter with a focus on getting rescued at the end and little else. No More Room in Hell 2 has a lot of potential. It plays around with clever ideas about how to get players to work together through some excellent level design, but those concepts aren't explored enough yet to make it more than just another co-op survival horror shooter with generic guns and scarce loot. This early access launch at least allows you to team up with friends for a few fun rounds, but with a single map that gets repetitive fast and a mountain of serious bugs that cause unexpected problems, it needs a lot more time in the oven. With many hotfixes already arriving and more supposedly on the way, hopefully the flames of hell are hot enough to cook it to perfection down the line, but you should probably wait until they do. For more, check out our reviews of Call of Duty Black Ops 6's Zombies mode, or A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead. And for everything else, stick with IGN.